everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's case is a much smaller one. Despite Disappeared covering it, despite Crime Watch Daily covering it, I feel like it just doesn't have the amount of attention that it needs. I feel like awareness and pressure is really all this case needs to bring this girl home, or at least to bring her family some answers. So today I will be talking to you about Zoe Campos. Zoe was 18 years old when she disappeared from Lubbock, Texas on November the 17th, 2013. She was an amazing young woman with a lot of opportunity ahead of her. She had a huge heart. She loved animals. And her mom said that at all times there were at least 2 of each kind of stray animal that she had picked up. I mean, she would get turtles and save them. She had cats, dogs, anything possible. She just wanted to help whatever stray animal that she could. She had a lot of passions. She loved, first of all, to eat food, and second of all, to make it. It was something really entertaining for her. And despite her parents divorcing when she was a little bit younger, she managed to keep a good relationship with both of her parents. And her dad, even though he was in the army, when he would come home, he taught her his skill of being a mechanic. She absolutely loved working on cars. That was probably her largest passion, and she did eventually want to become a mechanic. She bought her first car right before she disappeared, and it was this old beat up car, but she was so proud of it. She knew that she bought that and it was her fixer-upper, and she got to learn on it, and it was just something that meant a lot to her. But her biggest love of all was just family in general. She ended up moving in with her sister when her sister became a single mom of 2, and she loved her niece and nephew. It was almost this joke that she was the mom, she was the one who loved them and took care of them. Not that her sister didn't, she just was that kind of aunt. Like, she was their mom whenever she could be. And then she also absolutely adored her mom. It was another big joke that the umbilical cord hadn't even been cut yet. She was always at her mom's side, always talking to her mom, always confiding in her mom. She just loved her family. She wasn't the type of girl that would run off and spend 98% of her time with friends. She wanted to be with the people that she loved the most. She wanted to run around with her nieces and nephews. She wanted to talk with her sister. She wanted to sit and hang out with her mom. That was just the type of young woman she was. The day she went missing was a pretty normal day. She spent the day with her sister and her sister's kids and her mom over at her mom's house before her mom had to go to work her night shift at the bar. She left at some point that evening to go and visit a friend that had just had a baby. Now, this friend had a couple of other friends over, some people she'd never met before. She was only over there for a little bit, just I think congratulating her would be my guess, and then she left and met up with her sister's friend, and her nieces and nephews at a restaurant where they all ate dinner. And then they decided, since it was late, they were just gonna grab a movie from Redbox real quick and all go home together and watch it. At around 11:30 that night, her sister was like, I'm tired, these kids need to go to bed. So she decided to go on up and assumed that Zoe would probably follow suit. Zoe apparently had been falling asleep the entire movie, so she assumed everything was normal. Zoe would go to bed, normal night. However, that's not really how it played out. At around 2:20 a.m., Zoe's mom clocked out of her bartending job, and she just so happened to also receive a text message from Zoe. Now, Zoe's mom's car was out of service. It was in the shop at the moment, so Zoe had texted her offering to give her a ride home. Obviously, her mother graciously accepted this, and after about 10 minutes of Zoe not showing up, she became a little bit concerned, so she called Zoe. The first time she called, it rang perfectly, but without an answer, and so she called one more time, but this time it went straight to voicemail. She just assumed Zoe fell asleep, so she wasn't too worried and decided to go to sleep at a house right behind the bar that belonged to her friend, and that's kind of where the night ended. However, the next morning, Zoe's sister Savannah woke up to go to work. She went to tell Zoe that she was leaving, but she realized Zoe wasn't in her room. So again, at first, she didn't think much of this, so she decided to go check the couch. Obviously, the night before, Zoe had been drifting off on the couch, so it wouldn't really surprise her if she was down there just completely passed out still. Except Zoe wasn't on the couch either, so that's when she decided to call her mom. She asked her mom if Zoe was with her, and her mom said she wasn't, so this is when they both realized neither one of them had any idea where Zoe was. Zoe's car was gone, Zoe was gone, and at this point, no one could get in touch with her. So they both started calling over and over and over again. And still, just like the night before, Zoe's phone was going straight to voicemail, which was completely out of character for her. She was attached to her phone, attached to it, to the point where when you saw Zoe, you saw her phone charger in the other hand. She didn't leave the house without it. She always had it with her. So for her phone to be dead, especially for an extended period of time, was not normal. They called around to a few different people trying to figure out if anyone had seen Zoe, and still no one had heard from her. So at around 5 p.m. they finally called the police department, gave them all of her information, and filed a missing persons report. They immediately tried to ping her phone to find the current location. Her phone was either turned off or dead, so they weren't able to gather any information. Her family all got together and they spent the next about 3 days desperately searching for Zoe. Zoe never came home, her phone never turned back on, and this was 100% not like her. If she for some reason was even going to be late on curfew or coming back home, she always called, always said something. They searched back roads, they looked absolutely everywhere for her car or for any sign of her, and unfortunately came up with nothing. Then 36 hours after Zoe went missing, something absolutely crazy happened, and I think it is literally the saving grace in this entire case. Zoe's aunt Monica was heading home one night, and she saw a car pass by her going the opposite direction that looked exactly like Zoe's. Now, she had no idea if it really was. There are a lot of cars that look like Zoe's, but just out of gut feeling, she did a U-turn and decided to follow this car. Now, to confirm if it was Zoe's or not, so she could either keep following and figure out what was going on or go back home, she called Zoe's mom, and there was, I guess, some damage on one of the bumpers, confirming 100% that this car in front of her was Zoe's. Obviously, this is incredibly exciting. At this point, they thought they finally found her. So she goes to pull up beside the car and is horrified when she sees a man, an unknown man in a hooded jacket, driving Zoe's car. She couldn't see anything but his profile. She couldn't figure out any of his features, absolutely nothing. It was just this hooded person in the driver's seat and no sign of Zoe anywhere. However, this didn't stop her. She said, you know, maybe Zoe's laying down in the back seat. Maybe she's trapped in the trunk. Their minds at this point were just going absolutely crazy. So Monica called her son, which was Zoe's cousin, and said, please drive towards me. We're going to keep following this together. She obviously wanted a male figure there for safety, and they were going to try to figure out who this person was that was driving Zoe's car. Now, she played this out perfect. She kept her distance. She tried to not draw attention to herself because at this point she knew there was some strange man driving Zoe's car. However, she thinks he eventually caught on because out of nowhere he completely ducked out down this random side street, and knowing the dangerous possible situation, she had no choice but to keep driving past and not follow him anymore. However, then she met up with her son, and he drove down that road and found the car abandoned in Driftwood Apartments. Now, they immediately called the cops, immediately called Zoe's mom, said this car has been dropped here. They went and asked neighbors if the car had been there before. No one recognized this car, so essentially, this person probably got scared, ditched the car, and then ran, and they had no idea where he went. Police came out to check the car and found some interesting things. They found duct tape. However, I know this sounds a little bit suspicious, but her family pretty strongly believes that it is duct tape she kept in the car to fix random things on the car, so that's not too alarming anymore. They found some of her clothes. I did find in one article, and I'm not sure if this is 100% correct or not, but it said that one of her jackets was in the trunk, indicating, you know, either she threw her clothes back there or maybe she was in the trunk at one point. And there was also a men's hooded sweatshirt in the car, and her phone charger was in the back seat. Now that her car turned up in an area where it shouldn't normally be, there were no signs of Zoe in or around the car, and it was a stranger that was driving it. Police began to take this a little bit more seriously. It went from an 18-year-old girl who might have run away to she could possibly be in serious danger. So they started really looking more into her phone records for any clues they possibly could. They found that her last text message was sent a little after 2 a.m. I'm assuming it was the text message she sent to her mother. They found that the last place she was in when her phone was on was within a 1-mile radius of Lowry Field in Lubbock, Texas. Now, This alarmed her family a lot because this area was not known to be a great area. It was known for drugs, it was known for prostitution. It was a very dangerous place, and they had absolutely no idea why she would be in this specific area. It was pretty much just either highway or neighborhood. So there weren't really a lot of options as to why she could have been there. There were some motels around that area, but there weren't many stores or, reasons why she would go specifically to that place. Her family immediately started searching the area. They got a ton of different people together, and they all started combing through all areas in that 1 mile radius.
Her phone was pinged 1 mile radius from Lowry Fields.
Lowry Field may be the search's starting point, but Zoe's search parties are looking high and low, combing through nearby apartments and surrounding open fields.
And while they were doing that, police started looking even deeper into the phone records and anything social media, just anything in general that they could find. That same night, her phone pinged to the same tower. So it did ping at that tower a little bit after 2, and then it did it again between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. And who she contacted in this time frame is a little bit interesting. She called a man named Ben Flores, and this man, from what I've seen, was a friend of her mom's. It was someone her dad's age. I think he might have been a romantic interest at one point and then just ended up being a friend. But she spent 30 minutes on the phone with this man, and no one had any idea why she would have done that at 1 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. Yes, she knew him, but they weren't necessarily close. They decided to bring him in and question him, hoping this could be the key that unlocked the entire case, and unfortunately, he led them to even more questions. He claimed that night he had been drinking and he just went to sleep. He claims to not remember that it did happen. He claims to not remember the phone call. He claims to never have even spoken to her. So even though he is denying all of this, they have the records to prove that it did happen. But they asked him to take a polygraph test, which he did accept, and he passed everything except for one question. And the one question was, do you know where Zoe is? And that one he ended up failing. Now, I want to disclaim right here, as I do whenever we talk about polygraph tests, they are not very reliable. There are a lot of reasons why usually you can't even use them in court. They can be easily manipulated, so take that with a grain of salt. Zoe's mom then confronts him herself because she's like, why on earth would you be talking to my daughter at that time of night, right on the night that she disappeared? And he again just had more excuses. He said, I was drinking. I don't remember talking to her. She asked why he failed the question on the polygraph test, and his excuse was, I needed a cigarette. They were making me anxious. They wouldn't let me, go out and smoke. So he just had a bunch of, random excuses for the mother as well. There isn't much more information on this man, on the relationship with the family that he had. So as much as I think it could be huge, and that is a huge part of this story, we don't really have much more to form an opinion on. Police then started looking into Zoe's love life in hopes of maybe finding out where she went that night, because being a young woman, she probably left her house to go see a boyfriend, and then they realized that actually at this time she didn't have one. So they went to find one of her ex-boyfriends of over 2.5 years, questioned him. He was completely cooperative. He gave them all the answers they needed, but unfortunately he had not even spoken to Zoe in the past few months since they broke up. So he led to nothing. That's when they found out she did have a boyfriend for a short span afterwards. Now again, there's not much information on this boyfriend, but apparently she hid him from her mom for a little bit of time because he had a criminal record and he also had a child with another young woman. Those were two things her mom would not have wanted for her or really approved of. However, eventually, because she had such a great relationship with her mom, she ended up telling her mom about this guy. Her mom ended up meeting him, her sister met him, and they both said they got bad vibes from this guy, that he just wasn't a good character. And that was proven just a few days before Zoe's disappearance. Savannah, Zoe's sister, talked to Zoe about something that apparently was going on in their relationship. This guy, I guess, left his girlfriend for Zoe. However, little did Zoe know, he was basically bouncing back and forth between the both of them, two-timing them. I mean, he had these girls completely tricked. She confronted him about it, which led to a pretty large argument. And based on information I have, he ended up back with his ex-girlfriend, other girlfriend that wasn't Zoe. However, when they questioned him, they were able to rule him out fairly quickly because that particular girlfriend that he had claims that they were together that night at her house, I'm pretty sure she said. I personally think it's very easy for her to say that. You know, if he was involved in it, I'm sure she wasn't over there rooting for the other girlfriend, like the second girlfriend. So I'm hoping they had other more significant and proven reasons other than her alibi, because to me that's not a very strong one, because she could have had every motive in the world to want this girl gone. No one wants to be the other woman. No one wants to be the second choice. This could have made her angry. She would conceal anything if it meant him probably coming back to her. At least that's what I would think. So I have my fingers crossed that they put more into that to rule him out, because I feel like there could be something funky with that situation. They had also gone to Zoe's friend that she went to see that night with the baby, and they questioned everyone of the friends who were there that night, and no one really seemed to raise any bells until they started going through her Facebook messages. So there was a young man that she met for the first time when she went over to her friend's house. Now this young man did claim to see her that night, had the right time that she left, answered everything else great, except he didn't tell them that he saw her later on that night. When they went through Zoe's messages, they realized he was actually the reason why she left her apartment that night. So apparently around 11:30, around when her sister went to bed, this guy had been messaging her, asking her to come over and smoke some marijuana with him. So I guess she was not really into it at first. She had just met this guy a few hours before, but he eventually convinced her to do it. So they went to question him again, and his excuse for not revealing this information was that he was scared he was going to get in trouble for asking a girl over to smoke some weed. Like, he was like, I didn't want to get in trouble for that, which the police find silly because it's something so small compared to a missing person. But when you're like 18 years old, you don't really grasp, I think, how serious someone missing is, and you kind of assume they'll be home. So he was being a selfish teenager, which is not very uncommon, I think. He says that she showed up, they hung out and talked outside for a little bit. He claims they never went inside of his house because apparently neither one of them had weed. She didn't have marijuana, he didn't have marijuana. Why did he ask her over? I have my theories to that in a little bit, but he claims, again, neither one of them had anything, so she left to go get some. She never came back. When they looked deeper into the messages, they did see that a couple hours later, he kept messaging her, asking her where she was at, why she wasn't coming back, if she was coming back. Was this his attempt at covering his own butt, or did he really not know where she was? We can speculate, and that's about it. We decided to search into his history and try to figure out if he had any sort of reason for wanting to harm her, if he had talked to anyone about her, and they found a few more alarming things. He had been talking to many other girls that night, many other young women, and he was very sexually aggressive. It was very obvious he wanted to get some that night. They say that the way he was treating these other women could be like a legal problem. It was almost to the point of sexual harassment. It was not okay what he was doing. And to make matters even more suspicious, his home was in that mile radius that we talked about earlier. So the last two places her phone pinged was in that area. Now, we can't fully say it was at his house because it's not that specific, but there is a chance. Now, police have done their best in this case. I will say this, a lot of you guys complain a lot that I only show police that do bad police work. Unfortunately, that's not really under my control. I can't help what these police officers do in these cases. I will never prioritize how the police handled situations over me speaking about the victim. That's just kind of like something that comes along with the case. It's not like I choose cases based around how police act. However, I do want to state in this particular case, police have done fairly well. There were a few bumps along the road. That's kind of expected in missing persons cases, but just to follow up some of the leads that the police didn't really follow up as much on because, again, they really zoned in on this random guy she met that day. They decided to hire a private investigator in 2014, so about a year after she disappeared. They were hoping that fresh eyes on the case would help. They were hoping that someone who wasn't a police officer would help. They were hoping that she would follow some of these random, outlandish sounding leads and hopefully get answers. There's one common lead, I guess, and it keeps being brought up in both of their searches. They both received tips, and I think it was a few of them, that Zoe was seen at a motel the night she disappeared. I've seen a couple different bits of information when it comes to this tip. I've seen one bit of information that said that someone saw Zoe pushed into a car at this motel. I've seen another bit of information that says that a woman just saw her walking down the stairs at a motel, and I'm not 100% sure which one of those it is, which kind of sucks because those could be two very drastically different scenarios. I do find it interesting because this motel is 100% within that 1 mile radius that she was last pinged in. The private investigator tried to get in contact with the woman who left the tip. It was a woman named Kim, and followed the lead all the way to her husband, interestingly enough, who had been a janitor at the motel at the time. Now, she spoke to Kim's husband, and Kim's husband did confirm to her that Kim said she 100% saw Zoe at this motel that night, and he led the private investigator to their home where she was able to talk to Kim and once again confirm this entire story. This woman saw Zoe walking down the stairs. So to me, that seems like she was probably by herself. She probably wasn't being forced. However, we don't have enough of the details to really know. Her mom highly thinks that she is a victim of human trafficking. Now, motels, especially like ones in this area that are known for drugs, known for prostitution, those link up pretty close to human trafficking. Where there are prostitutes, there are pimps. Where there are pimps, there are gangs. Where there are gangs, there is human trafficking. I mean, it's this huge world that no one ever really thinks about. So while they're busy chasing the human trafficking possibilities and tracing down those leads, the police still 100% believe that the young man she met that night has something to do with her disappearance, and they do not think it is very possible that she was a victim of human trafficking. So they decided to revisit the home of the young man, and this time they brought dogs because the investigator on the case believes that Zoe was in his house at one point or another. He had already lied about seeing her one time, so it's very possible he lied about her being in the house. Now, he had moved out of the house at this point. I think it was some 2 years after she disappeared, but the dog still picked up her scent. This dog picked up her scent out back in the alley behind the home where the dumpsters are and tracked it straight down the same route that a dump truck would possibly go, which was very alarming for the investigators. And then inside the house, the dog picked out 5 different areas that Zoe had been. So to them, this immediately meant she was inside this house, and if he's lying about this, what else is he lying about? The car was sent off for a forensic examination. Now, when they sent it off, they apparently found a couple of different male DNA profiles in the car, but none of which had a match so far in the database. So after they got the 5 different alerts from the dogs just inside the home alone, they decided to go ahead and test this young man's DNA against some of the DNA in the vehicle. And I'm pretty sure within the next few months, we should have an answer as to if that's a match or not. The detective Adam Freeman, who is the one currently working on the case, is following literally every possible lead. Like, he is working so hard on this. He even said to Zoe's mom, like, this is your daughter and now she belongs to me as well. Like, he is 100% dedicated to this case. They started looking in Abilene, they started looking in Austin, they started looking in El Paso. They also added Mexico to their list because of the possibility of human trafficking. Since they have been able to rule out that she is in Abilene or Austin, but El Paso and Mexico are still up, as far as I know, as possible places she could be. So if you are in either of those places in particular, share her missing persons poster anywhere you possibly can. She has a whole entire army of people behind her trying to find her. They do constant searches. Right now, the reward for any information leading to her is $11,000. They even put up a billboard in Lubbock on the most traveled road. Lubbock is not a very large place, so most people have to go on this road at one point or another. And that to me is great because that means her face is out there and you're not going to forget it. And this is when we get into all of the different theories. Obviously, one we can rule out right away is that she ran away. She loved her family. Like, she wouldn't offer to go and get her mom and then just drop off the face of the earth. While this isn't something necessarily that they have entertained for any amount of time, I know you guys will probably talk about that in the comment section. I highly, highly, highly doubt that she decided to run away. The next theory is that this young man she met that night, or her mom's friend, this older man she talked to on the phone, had something to do with it. From what I've seen on like web sleuths forums, people who are trying to figure out what happened to this girl, a lot of people are putting a lot of emphasis on him wanting her to come over and smoke and then not actually having anything. I think he knew exactly what he wanted that night. He had been messaging multiple other girls about it. He had just met Zoe. He couldn't come off that strong, or he'd probably scare the crap out of her and never get to what he wanted, which in the end was probably sex. I think luring her over to just smoke and chill, he kind of thought that maybe if she came over and talked to him for a little bit and got a little bit more comfortable, he already had to convince her to come over according to what police have said. So she was obviously saying no at one point, and maybe this was just his like little way of trying to convince her to come, despite whether he had any marijuana or not. He probably expected to have her show up, charm her a little bit while she's outside, you know, woo her, sweep her off her feet, and then get down to what he really wanted to do. I also don't find it that strange that he lied about her coming over. I also don't think that immediately says that he is guilty. You know, mix the fact that he's probably 18 years old as well. You know, he tried to get a girl to come over to smoke weed with him. That's like already an illegal activity. And then his ulterior motive of wanting to have sex with her more than likely, I feel like that's just like a very bad mix, and I'm sure he was probably embarrassed and scared that he was going to get in trouble, and that's why he didn't tell. I don't think that automatically means he's guilty of something, but it is very suspicious at the same time. However, he did say that she did not come inside, and the dogs pretty much called him out on that lie by alerting to her scent 5 separate times inside the house and behind the house near the dumpsters. I put more into these dogs than polygraph tests, than anything of that sort, because they are trained specifically for this purpose. And if you do any research on different types of cadaver dogs, sniffer dogs, they all have great track records. They all, you know, do a great job. It's not a high percentage of failure most of the time. So I want to do a little walkthrough at this point. She left her home, I would assume, sometime between 11:30 and 12. So I'm sure Zoe didn't want to leave until her sister was asleep, probably to not alert her or, you know, get any questions asked like, where are you going? What are you doing? I'm assuming 30 minutes is enough time. And once again, this is all assumption. The drive to the area she would have been at is anywhere between 7 to 9 minutes, which is not a long driving time at all, putting her at his house roughly like 10 past midnight. So no one hears from her in that time span until about an hour later, when she calls her mom's friend. So if she only stayed for a few minutes, long enough to realize that neither one of them have weed, I'm assuming they probably talked in the driveway for tops like 20 to 30 minutes. Meaning she probably left his house at around like 12:30, 12:40. That means she made the phone call to this man somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes and about 45 minutes to an hour within leaving the young man's house. So it's been said over and over again by Zoe's mother that you can get anywhere in Lubbock, Texas within like 5 to 10 minutes. So that means travel time would tops be about 20 minutes to even the other side of town, and she should have been back at that point with the weed. So did she ever come back to his house? He claims she didn't, but then where else would she go? Some people think it's possible she contacted this older man as, I guess, like a connect. Maybe she called him to get some marijuana. But again, if she did, why would she have spent 30 minutes on the phone with him, and why would she have called him so much later than the time she probably left the young man's house? Now again, keep in mind, this is all based on a very loose time frame from what we've been given and just estimations and guesses, so this is not concrete, not set in stone. I'm just trying to make sense of the time frame the best I can. Another thing I find interesting is that Zoe's mom's friend actually lives in the same 1 mile radius as well. So if she had decided to go over and get weed from him, it probably would have only taken her tops like 10 minutes. So this big chunk of time between when she probably would have left his house and when she called this guy, I cannot make sense of. Which leads me to the idea that she did probably end up going inside this young man's house and something more than likely happened there. The dog alerted many times in the house, and as we all know, he was very sexually aggressive towards females this night. I'm sure he contacted her after finding her on Facebook with a very strong purpose in mind. It's very possible that he made sexual advances and maybe she was not down for that. You know, maybe she was able to put it off for a while, which would explain why it was a longer time period until she called her mom's male friend. Maybe she started feeling uncomfortable, maybe he was being too pushy, maybe more happened, and maybe she thought she needed some sort of male figure's help. And that's why she called Ben Flores. You know, it's very possible that she just needed some male in the area to help her get out of the situation. However, again, they weren't very close, so I don't know how plausible that is of an idea. It's also possible that maybe this young man did something to her. Maybe when she said no, he wasn't happy with it and he did something. But, you know, did he live with his parents? How did his parents not heard something like that? To me, that's the only reason why the dog would have alerted to the dumpster, is if he did something to her and disposed of something in it, you know, or maybe when she was fleeing in a hurry, if he was being way too aggressive with her sexually, she left some of her things behind, maybe a jacket that she took off or something, and he just threw it in the dumpster to hide any evidence of her being there. But then again, why would you do that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I feel like every time we get closer to a possible theory and answer, there's so many other things that just don't make sense about it. The men's hooded jacket was found inside the car. If this young man was the one who did something to her, his DNA probably is linked to it. A male was seen driving the car, could very easily be this young man that she met that night. And it's very possible that the hooded jacket that Zoe's aunt saw is the same hooded jacket that was found in the car. Maybe whoever was driving it, possibly this young man, was so terrified when he was being followed that he decided to ditch the vehicle, and obviously he wants to keep his identity a secret. If he had his hood up, it would be very obvious to look for a man with a hooded jacket. So maybe in his attempt to hide everything, he took the jacket off and threw it off in the car and ran, not really realizing he was leaving his DNA behind in the car. What I will say is the area that the car was dropped off in, I feel like the businesses around there need to be searched security footage wise. So when I pulled up a map, and I'll show you right here, there's the apartments right here, and it's literally all surrounded by homes. It's just neighborhoods and neighborhoods and neighborhoods. And if you were to ditch a car and run off, easiest way to run would be up to all these businesses on 50th Street. And I mean, you guys, there are a ton of them. There's like a McDonald's, a Whataburger, there's banks, there's all sorts of things. So I really hope police thought to check of all those businesses along that strip, because if you're trying to blend in, if you're trying to not be seen by someone, the easiest place to do that is in a very public area, which means this person probably went and roamed around a gas station for a little bit, or went and, you know, sat in a McDonald's. Back to the young man and Ben Flores. A lot of people think they somehow knew each other. I just think that would be an incredible coincidence, honestly. If I'm hanging out with someone, especially someone that I'd never hung out with before other than meeting them a few hours ago, I wouldn't be rude and talk to someone else on the phone for 30 minutes, which to me says it was Zoe who made this phone call, which means the likeliness of something happening to her at this young man's house, the chances of it just keep dropping down the more I talk through everything. Because if this young man did something to Zoe, she wouldn't have been able to make that phone call, and it wouldn't be a 30-minute long phone call while she was with him. You know, why would he pick up the phone and decide to call this man unless he knew him? I also 100% think that the text Zoe sent to her mom was from her. Unless she told the young man she was with, or, you know, whoever she might have been with, that her mom was getting off of work, there's no way someone else could have faked that. She would have been the only one to know that information. And to top it off, if you were going to do something to somebody, the last thing you're going to do is tell their parents you'll be there in a couple of minutes. That would just make them more aware and alert of the situation. It would be faster if they found out what you did. So what in the heck happened to her in the 10-minute time frame after that? And that is what's driving me crazy. It's like all this random time and hours that go unaccounted for, but I feel like she was fine. I feel like she was fine up until that text message was sent. And then what happened? What happened in that 10 minutes, you guys? 10 minutes. That's terrifying. You know, that something can happen in that short of a time frame. You know, I don't think she was with this young man, because she wouldn't be on a 30-minute phone call with a random person while with a new guy she just met. Like, where was she? Where was she and what was she doing? It's gonna drive me crazy forever. That leads us to human trafficking, which is what the mother, as far as I have seen, believes is what possibly happened to her. What would make it the most likely to me would be if this young man somehow had ties with human trafficking. He was in a drug and gang and prostitute neighborhood. It's very possible he was involved in one of those things. Even her mother's friend, Ben Flores. However, if the young man was luring her in to put her into human trafficking, I highly doubt he would use very sexually aggressive methods. He'd been talking to multiple other women that night. So that does seem suspicious that he was just trying to get some sort of female over, which could be to put into human trafficking and prostitution. I doubt, he would do it in an aggressive way. It would be in a much calmer way. No female is going to respond to sexual harassment and come over. To me, he just seemed like he simply was driven by sex. So then that brings us to her being at this motel. Now again, this motel is known for drugs. It's very possible she went there to buy some weed. However, again, something happened in the 10 minutes after she texted her mom, which would have been the drive from wherever she was at to her mom's work. So I don't think she would have gone 10 minutes before going to get her mom to buy weed, because the only reason she was going to buy it was to go back and hang out with this other guy. So I would assume that would have happened at least an hour before that. I think the motel being involved is the only real way human trafficking would be the most plausible theory. Maybe she stopped for gas along the way to get her mom though, and someone scoped her out and somehow lured her out of her car and took her. The first time someone called her after that, it did ring. Whoever took her or had her or whatever happened, someone purposely turned it off after that so that it couldn't be tracked. And that is incredibly, incredibly alarming. It is absolutely heartbreaking. Her family is devastated. They are doing everything they can. The police department is doing absolutely everything they can. They just need the right tips. With how strange this young man and Ben Flores are acting, they know something. There is something going on here. And other than Zoe's mom, the last known person to speak to her was Ben Flores. Like, how do you just not remember that conversation? There's something so weird going on here. I know a lot of you guys live in Texas, and it would mean the absolute world if you would share either this video or just her story or her missing persons poster anywhere you possibly can, you guys. Someone knows something. We say this in every single video. Someone knows something. You can put in anonymous tips with this case. You don't have to say who you are. If you know something and you're scared to come forward because of, what someone might do to you, or because you're scared because you smoked weed with her that night and don't want to get in trouble, it doesn't matter. They're not coming after you. They want their daughter back. They want their loved one back. They want to bring Zoe home. If you know something, report it. I have the anonymous tip line down in my description box down below. Again, you can remain 100% anonymous. If you know something, there should be not a single thing stopping you from reporting it to that tip line. I feel like it's crazy that her aunt saw this stranger driving her car. Like, what are the chances? What are the chances of that? And I feel like just that tiny bit of information, as minuscule as it might seem right now and as little answers as it might seem to be bringing right now, could completely glue everything together if they get some more information. Let me know what you guys think down below. This was a hard one to go through. This is a very confusing one to go through, and I applaud everyone who is investigating it. It is very, very confusing. I hope everyone gets some answers and this case is closed soon. I'm literally going to be searching constantly to see what happens with these DNA tests, and you guys know I will immediately let you know as well once I find out. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting my channel and helping me spread awareness about these missing persons. It truly means the world to me, and I know the parents appreciate it. Exposure is sometimes all it takes to bring some of these people home. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to become a